Hello, everyone. I'm a postdoctoral scholar at the AI on the Ground initiative of the Data and Society Research Institute. The paper I'll be presenting today centers on the theoretical foundation and empirical research from my dissertation research at Cornell University. I wrote it in collaboration with Steve Jackson at the Department of Information Science, who was also a member of my dissertation party. In this paper, we focus on the efforts of the Indian government to use public data systems to manage citizens and how citizens respond to, navigate, and resist such efforts. However, in the interest of brevity, our focus in this presentation is on the conundrums of the relationship between the identity of people who are subject to data-driven practices, or data subjects as we call them in this paper and this talk, and their representation in the workings of a data infrastructure through data records. While identity broadly conceived is about who you are, representation in data infrastructures characterizes your identity through standardized data categories. The interplay between the two raises the fundamental question that we explore in this talk. How do data records mutually shape the identity and everyday lives of data subjects? As we will illustrate throughout this talk, this question lends itself into a variety of concerns that should drive how we think about questions of inclusion, fairness, accountability, and justice in a data-driven world. We've used this question as an organizing principle to research and write about Aadhaar, India's biometric-based national identification infrastructure. Over the past 5 years, I have followed the legal, administrative, and socio-technical controversies over the design, implementation, and use of Aadhaar. Aadhaar translates in English to foundation or the basis for something else. In producing an ethnography of this project, I was interested not only in making of the foundation, but also its becoming the basis for something else, how this something else is articulated, promoted, and ultimately enacted. In 2010, the Indian government started collecting fingerprints, iris scans, and facial photographs of every Indian resident, along with their basic demographic information, their name, age, gender, and address, to give them a unique 12-digit Aadhaar number. I began my fieldwork on Aadhaar in 2015. Here it is important to note that Aadhaar is a voluntary government scheme. You do not need to have an Aadhaar number. It is issued to an Indian resident. Issuance of the number does not guarantee rights, benefits, or entitlements of Indian citizenship. However, the government has also insisted on using it to improve its services. By extension, it has made Aadhaar mandatory to access many of its services, especially its welfare schemes. Thus, the number has also become the condition for securing citizenship rights in India. This orientation to designing government projects, which are voluntary in policy and mandatory by extension, is not limited to India. It is rather a global phenomenon. Private companies, such as mobile service providers, are not far behind in using Aadhaar to deliver their services to customers. An Aadhaar enrollee is simultaneously a resident, a citizen, and a customer, depending upon where they decide to use their Aadhaar identity and to what purpose. We're going to illustrate this point using a quote from a right to food activist who has been following the use of Aadhaar in authenticating citizens' claims to subsidize food grains under the welfare scheme of the Public Distribution System, or PDS, that provides access to food rights to below party line families in India. In order to access their PDS entitlements, citizens must first enroll into Aadhaar, then add their Aadhaar number to the PDS database, and then authenticate themselves to the PDS bureaucracy by using their fingerprints in the process of claiming their subsidized food grains. As the right to food activists put it, these processes can be difficult to navigate in situations when authentication through biometrics fails. They capture data in 3 columns. The first column contains people who came to the shop, their biometrics matched, and they got their food grains. The second column contains people who came to the shop, but their biometrics did not match, and therefore they did not get any food grains. And the third column contains people who never came to the shop. Since January 2016, we have data of all the shops, and there is 0% error rate in authentications, meaning that in column 2, there's not a single entry. Even the Unique Identification Authority of India, in charge of implementing Aadhaar, claims that there is 5% error rate in authentications. When we pointed this out to the Department of Food Supplies and asked why you're not populating the second column, they said that we know that there is a problem in the software, and we only capture these two data in the first and the third column. Now they plan to cancel the ration cards of beneficiaries who have not come to the shop to claim their benefits at all between the months of January and July 2016, because clearly they're not invested in coming to the shop. Whereas the reality is that they're going to the shop, but their biometrics are not registered. So this becomes another way of throwing people out of the food security net. We wish to draw attention to the difficulties in securing a data record that not only documents, but also certifies that a beneficiary went to a fair price shop to claim their previous entitlement. In the case recounted by the Right to Food activists, the shop owners are witnesses to the act of beneficiaries claiming previous entitlements by trying to authenticate their Aadhaar identity. However, authentication can fail for a variety of reasons, ranging from infrastructural issues such as lack of electricity and network connectivity to data collection issues such as lack of distinct fingerprints. Although the beneficiary's presence could be confirmed manually by shop owners, it couldn't be confirmed through the second column for data collection on beneficiaries who came to the shop, but their biometrics did not match. Filling this column requires differentiating between true negatives and false negatives. That is, differentiating between a fraudulent person trying to authenticate against Aadhaar number of rightful beneficiaries from failure to authenticate rightful beneficiaries when they're trying to claim their entitlements themselves. Since its work remains unaccounted for in the design of the PDS data system, rightful beneficiaries whose fingerprints did not match were labeled as people who never came to the shop. Rendered invisible, such beneficiaries are now increasingly being removed from Aadhaar-enabled PDS in Delhi. Correcting this data depends on two crucial forms of work: the work performed by street-level bureaucrats in appropriating Aadhaar to deliver government services, and the work citizens as the beneficiaries are frequently called upon to do in the face of failed or mischaracterized authentications to maintain their access to these services. These kinds of works together sustain the visibility of a citizen to state bureaucracies and co-constitute what it means to be a unique data of a rightful beneficiary in a welfare database. Beneficiaries who fall into the residual data category of having forsaken their entitlements because of repeated authentication failures, false negatives, over time will not only have to prove that they're unique, but also that they have not forsaken their entitlements. My fieldwork was rife with such mundane, ongoing, ordinary forms of collaborative work of organizational actors in representing users and of users in claiming representation through data. In the context of this paper, these organizational actors are street-level bureaucrats engaged in implementing Aadhaar, and these users are Indian citizens who use Aadhaar to claim welfare services. In analyzing this work, and following the uneven distribution of the consequences of data infrastructures for everyday life in India, we draw on James Scott's work of Seeing Like the State to develop the analytic framework of Seeing Like an Infrastructure. This framework captures the distributed work of first, street-level bureaucrats in administering welfare, and second, everyday struggles of low-income data subjects in securing welfare benefits. Seeing Like a State showcases how bureaucratic procedures simplify and reorganize citizens' identities to make them legible to state actors. Simplification and the pursuit of legibility, however, is only the beginning of the processes of building and maintaining data systems. An equally expansive domain of distributed and collaborative work in operationalizing data systems as public data infrastructures goes into securing the validity and legitimacy of the core data categories that make up the data infrastructure. These data categories impute classificatory qualities to citizens. For example, income is used to represent how poor a citizen is and their eligibility to access welfare. These categories are not only assigned top-down to citizens by bureaucrats, but must also be claimed by citizens from the ground up to access government services. Counting something as something is a condition for determining membership in a field of things or a group of people. Counting involves categorical judgments. In our case, Categorical judgments refer to making decisions on what data categories represent when they're used to organize state governance. These judgments predicate the circulation and interpretation of data across diverse databases that increasingly determine membership in and access to government services. Certain combinations of data provide more comprehensive pictures of data subjects than others. Visibility afforded by data infrastructures is not just a method of control and surveillance. It also conditions a data subject's agency, existence, and rights as a citizen. On the one hand, the presence of granular data makes them more visible and produces a higher resolution of data subjects. Resolution is a matter of adjustment and scale. Add, improve, or cross-reference data, and resolution increases, rather like zoom or focus of a camera lens. High-resolution citizens find it easier to align their data with their way of life. It poses the challenge of knowing too much and contends with the potential of invasion of privacy and surveillance. On the other hand, absence of representative data renders data subjects and their activities less visible to a data infrastructure. They're here at a lower resolution. Low-resolution citizens struggle to overcome the ineluctable differences between their data and their way of life. Lower resolution runs the problem of not knowing enough and manifests within challenges of data-driven marginalization and abjection. The spectrum between low and high resolution is crucial for analyzing the politics and uneven consequences of data infrastructures. In conceptualizing Seeing like an infrastructure, we bring together a comprehensive understanding of diverse mechanisms that manifest a spectrum of resolution for data subjects. On the one hand, the spectrum raises crucial questions for state bureaucracies, confronted by the complexity of managing citizens at scale. For example, what data is required from citizens to deliver government services? How can this data be used to improve efficiency of and inclusion in government services? These questions are integral in understanding the workings of a data-driven state. On the other hand, an understanding of the spectrum also offers a toolkit for citizens to approach a different set of questions. How do my actions impact my visibility or lack thereof in core data categories of organizing government services? How can I better fit within or strategically disappear from data systems that constitute my relationship to the state? The spectrum of resolution, thus, is a map of diverse experiences and struggles of living with data and claiming citizenship through it. It captures the emerging tensions in the relationships between organizations, here the state, enacting the role of observers, and users, here citizens, who are observed through data. When the observed are afforded a broader scope of participation, which includes, for example, learning to navigate the network logic of infrastructures, capacity to leave without penalty of losing access to services, and opportunities to speak back and seek redress when faced with harms, their data can be effectively used to represent their lives. For computational tools that track behavior, which expect people to behave as if these tools are not there, the lesser the opportunities afforded to the observed in shaping their data, the more oppressive this relationship becomes. At the same time, the greater the opportunities provided, the easier it becomes to game the infrastructure. Resolution, thus, is crucial to map the balance of power in relationships between actors increasingly organized around and through data infrastructures and their differential agencies in navigating and negotiating these relations. Loopholes, workarounds, negotiations, contests, and a variety of emotions that accompany living with data. Our research takes a widely recognized insight in infrastructure studies as its starting point. While for most, data infrastructures work the same way, for others, they break down in uneven and distributed ways. However, following this uneven distribution of breakdowns has remained an analytic challenge with increasing calls to focus on everyday experiences of data subjects. We argue that unpacking these everyday experiences require close attention to the life chances of data subjects as they are mutually shaped by how they are represented through data. Neither are data records static representations of data subjects, nor are data subjects passive recipients of data-driven decisions. which lends us to the final point that we would like to end our presentation on. What are the new conditions of living in a data-driven world, and how do they emerge in contests over securing representation through data are two crucial questions in understanding the emerging conditions of living with data. Thank you.